Welcome. This English 2010 video talks about using tables and figures in your research report. So as we mentioned, research report can have maybe 5 different sections, but there may be good reasons why you want to include a figure or a table in your report. The most common place that we see figures and reports or figures and tables in research reports is in the results section, when you're reporting on the data that you've collected and answering your research questions. Let's talk about the difference between a figure and a table. So figures are more visual. These could include things like photographs, charts, like flow charts, maybe just describing a process, and all kinds of data graphs like a bar chart, a pie chart. Whereas a table is an organized list of data. So we might see it only contains usually text and numbers. Anything else, if we've got any pictures, that would be considered a figure, not a table. Now, tables can be really simple, but they could have multiple rows and columns. Generally, if you've only got one column or one row, then you don't need a table. You could just list it as part of your text. But if it's got multiple columns or multiple rows, then a table is preferred. So here are some general guidelines when you're using a figure or a table and you want to include it in your academic writing. First thing that's suggested is to refer to your figure or table in your paragraph. So you're writing a paragraph, you're describing your data or you're describing some information, and then you say, this table or this figure displays that information. And so that lets the reader know what this table is about or what this chart is about. You don't want to include charts and tables, figures in your writing without explaining them to the reader. There should be no question what they're about, why they're there, and why the user would want to look at them. Now, usually we include the figure or the table after the paragraph that you introduced it. If you put it before, then you've got that problem where the reader doesn't know what this is and why it's there. But if you put it as soon as you can in the sentence or paragraph after you introduce it, then the reader is prepared for that information and they can look at it and understand it and use that table or figure to help them better understand what you have just described in writing. It's also important to remember to label the table or the figure. When you use MLA format, it's better to put the label above the figure or the table. APA style, which is actually used a lot more in social science research, tends to put the label underneath the table or figure. But since we're writing in MLA style for this class, it's good to have it to get it and put it above the table or the figure. And it should be an informative title that helps the reader understand what is being presented. And then the actual table or figure comes after, and usually it is centered in the page. So not right to the left or the right, just nicely centered in the page. So here's an example. Maybe someone wrote a paragraph, and here's the last couple sentences of this paragraph about tourism. And then right after that paragraph ends, there is a line that has the title, the label for the paragraph. So this is the third figure that's been used in this research report. There was 2 other ones used previously, maybe in different sections, maybe in the same section, but this one's called figure 3. It has a title, factors influencing the formation of tourist needs, and then centered on the page is the chart that the author created. Now this one is introducing a table into the writing. And so there again, there's a paragraph that describes the topic. And then this time, instead of saying this figure or this table has this information, they describe the information, and then in parentheses, they have see table 1. So it's kind of like a citation, right? We can have citations either at the beginning of the sentence, table 1 shows blank, or we could say, here's this information, look at table 1 or see table 1 for more information. And then after that paragraph, we have our label that has the title. This is the first table that's being included in this research article. So it's table number 1. If we add another one, we'll call it table number 2. And then we have the table and we put it centered on the page. So keep in mind that when you do a research report, the most likely place that would have a table or a figure would be in the results section. But sometimes they appear in the introduction section when we want to explain or synthesize some information. Sometimes even in the results section where we want to show maybe the process for our primary research collection and analysis. And some writers also might include them in the discussion and conclusion section when they make recommendations or they talk about the implications or the applications of their research. But most likely the results section is where most tables and charts occur. So your job this week is to continue working on that draft if you haven't. Set up an appointment to visit with the tutor and get their feedback on whichever sections of your research report that you feel like could use the most help. You get to decide what part you feel is most important for tutor feedback. And then you can keep drafting and revising your work in preparation for the final draft, which will be due the following week.